Welcome to Basic Binges, everyone. I'm so excited to be here again today because we are doing the first installment of Ms. Marvel. What an amazing show, honestly. Personally, for me, I'm not super well versed in Kamala Khan lore. And honestly, I didn't think that this show was going to be as amazing as it was. But lo and behold, the first episode dropped. And not only is it amazing, but it's arguably probably the best of the Marvel streaming series debuts so far. I think, anyways. At least I think so. But we've got a panel of experts here to chat about whether or not that's the case. I would love to introduce everyone to Jasmin. We'll start with you first. Do you want to tell everyone about yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jasmin. My social media handle is Jasmin Joestar, so I am a huge nerd. I've been a Ms. Marvel fan since her comics actually dropped in 2014. So to see her come to fruition in the MCU and the Disney Plus series, it's like a dream come true. I still can't believe it. It's a bit surreal. And so I'm really happy to share my love with her with everybody. And I'm really happy to be here and discuss her.
Amazing. Great to have you, Jasmin. Thank you so much for being here. Toni, how about yourself?
Hey, everybody. I'm Toni Sanchez. My social is the Toni Sanchez. I am super pumped to be here and to talk about it. And I'm sorry, is it Jasmin or Jasmine?
Jasmin. Yeah. It's cool. Like Yasmin, but Jasmin is just easier. So
okay. Well, yeah, we'll talk about that after.
Yeah.
Okay, so. But just like you, I've been a huge fan since her comic debuted, and that's
the first one.
This is such a comfy cosplay, by the way. So if anybody wants to bring this back with me when I start cosplaying again this year, when I re-enter the world, totally down for that. But yeah, I'm so pumped. I'm glad that this is finally here. I'm pumped about it, but I also have my own thoughts and maybe a few criticisms about the first episode. But by and large, I am just absolutely thrilled to be here.
That's awesome. We're glad to have you, Toni. I'd love to dive into those thoughts. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Mike Manalo. Of course, I've been hosting some of the Moon Knight, shows, as well as helping with Obi-Wan and Book of Boba Fett on Basic Binges. Handle is at TidyBowBoy182. And with that, let's dive in, guys. Okay, so before we go into every detail of the episode sequentially, overall thoughts and reactions. Toni, I'd love to start with you. Overall, did you like the first episode? What were your thoughts holistically?
I have been waiting for not just Kamala Khan, but just in general. Well, before even this show debut, just when her comic dropped, I've been waiting for that kind of character for a very long time. Because when we start thinking about how there are several examples that I could kind of bring up about the nerdy superhero, the young, kind of unsure and awkward and maybe even a little bit cringy male superhero that kind of gets to find themselves, through their superpowers and find their confidence. I mean, Peter Parker is probably the ultimate paradigm of that trope. But when you start thinking about the female versions of that kind of character, I mean, it's pretty sparse. I think it's like Kitty Pryde, but only for the first 10 years of her existence within the comics, because then they quickly age her up just so that way I guess we feel a little bit better about her being a young adult soldier as opposed to a child soldier. But anyways, I digress. I was really excited to finally have somebody like Kamala, where it's that is firmly a teenage character, a brown girl at that. Just because that's also another thing that brown female characters, young female characters that we don't get to be awkward and weird. It's again, when you start opening it up even beyond superheroes, it's what's another example you could bring up? Lilo and Stitch. There's not very many opportunities for those kind of characters to really not just exist, but definitely be centered in a story. So to see her brought to life in this Disney Plus show and to see her like complete. I mean, first off, the actress Iman, she's perfect. It's a perfect casting in my mind. It just is really, it's blowing all my expectations. I have a few quips here and there about like timing and the pace of the episode, about certain sound mixing issues. But as far as like nailing who the character is, really trying to establish, her origin story, and really developing a world that feels like hers, but that still feels like part of the MCU. I'm thrilled. I'm very, my expectations have been met, and I can very much tell that they're going to be exceeded.
Out of 10, what would you give it?
8.5. 8.5 feels, yeah, especially for this episode, for this very first episode, it feels like an 8.5.
That's a very admirable score. I applaud that very much so. Jasmin, how about you? We'll go with point first, and then your details.
So I actually was blessed enough to go to the premiere, and I saw the first 2 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And Toni, you're gonna just
get better.
Hold on, it's gonna get even better than what it is. In my opinion, obviously, I'm very biased. So I've been, like I said earlier, a Miss Marvel fan since the comics dropped in 2014. My best friend got it for me. He said, "Hey, have you heard of this superhero? Brand new comic. She's Muslim. I'm Muslim." And I instantly, like, the moment I read the comic, I was just like, I can't believe it. Like, I feel for the first time in my life, like, seen. Like, I've always been a nerd since I've been a kid. And I just never really related to anybody. Like, we had such little like female heroes to begin with. And now we're getting, just like what Toni said, we're getting into like a bit younger. So they're not all very mature adults. And I think all of us here have like a young side to us. Like, we're young at heart. We love our comics. We love Disney, anime, all these things, right? So we're, a bit like, like our inner child is pleased. And so I was really happy with the first episode. I think they did a great job. I would also give it like same rating, 8.5 out of 10. I wanted to see more. The power changes, very interesting. I know that was like very debated upon topic, and we're seeing a little more of that, and you're going to see more as well going into the series. And that's it, no more spoilers for that. But I'm really happy to see what they did with her. I'm going to say I'm very biased. A lot of what happened in the first episode hit home. And hit a spot that I did not know. Like, there's such very little representation in pop culture when it comes to brown people from like Middle East, Muslim as well. And so the fact that this existed, I'm seeing it in the big screen, like, I saw it on the big screen. And then, the fact Disney, Marvel, my favorite things in the whole world, I'm very happy to see what they did with it. And I love Iman's the perfect casting. Has that, childhood innocence about her, which Miss Marvel has. I got vibes of Scott Pilgrim and Spider-Verse in the first episode. And I love Spider-Verse. I love Miles. I think everybody loves Peter Parker, Spider-Man. And I see that in her. She is that fangirl. She's young. She's playful. She's, just like all of us as teenagers, hella cringe. And so and then she's a fangirl, right? And she's cosplaying. I'm a cosplayer. I'm just like, it's funny because a lot of people have been memeing it with the Euphoria scene where the play is going on and the girl turns to the other girl. I totally forgot their names already, but she goes, is this fucking play about us? Sorry if like cursing is not allowed, but I'm just like, I felt that. I was just like, wait a minute, I feel kind of attacked as a cosplayer, but in a funny way, right? So I loved it, and I'm super happy with it. Yeah, 8.5 to 9 without the bias. With the bias, 9.5 out of
10. So this is coming from I've growing up, I was a huge comic book nerd. I loved the X-Men. That was my gateway drug into the Avengers. and literally the rest of the Marvel universe. Around the late thousands and maybe the 2010s as well, I would have on and off phases with comics. And the time that Kamala Khan debuted in around 2013, 2014, I was on my off phase. So I didn't actually, and I regret it now. I wish I picked up those first appearances because now she's huge and those are worth a lot. But I didn't get as introduced to this character. I haven't been as well versed with her mythology, since her existence. I missed out on that period. I got better versed on it, obviously, as soon as she started becoming a much bigger player in the Marvel comics, and started going back and rereading some of the comics just through the Marvel Unlimited app and everything. And I that being said, I love the fact that it spoke to both of you guys, as from a representation angle, as a brown female in comics, which is absolutely rare. That no one's ever seen that. I think that means the world to me. That it means the world to you guys, because that's what comics needs to be. That's what comic books need to be. That's what it never was like that in the 60s. It never was like that in the 70s, and it was like that all up until probably the mid thousands. I would say it started to change. So the fact that we're getting Kamala Khan in the comic books meant the world to so many people, especially, with Islamophobia being as high as it was during those times and everything like that, and still rampant and persistent today. To have a character out there represent that area, of culture means the world to a great sector of people. So all that to say, because I didn't have as much knowledge, about Kamala going into Ms. Marvel, I wasn't anticipating it as much as I was, like, let's say, Moon Knight, who I loved, or Doctor Strange, who I was a huge fan of as well. And then I watched the first two episodes as well. We won't spoil the second episode. We'll say that for another day. But we watched the first two episodes as well, and I was blown away. Like, without any bias, just very objectively going into this. I think the only exposure I really had was playing as her in the Marvel Avengers video game, which wasn't a very good game, to be honest.
Which I think your shirt is actually referencing, by the way.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I
broke my heart that the game was not great.
The game was not great.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's not a very good first exposure for Kamala Khan. I think you could have done so much better. But that being said, this first episode, out of the gate, I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. And the reason being is because it's just delightful. There's nothing you can say about it that's really just like, it's so bright and optimistic. I love the Edgar Wright touches to everything. Like, when they're texting each other and you see the emojis and the dots and the symbols when they're walking.
That was so cool.
It was great. And it reminded me a lot of Baby Driver, where he's like listening to that song and you see the lyrics on the walls and everything like that. And I was like, this is such an Edgar Wright kind of, not tongue-in-cheek, winking at the camera, fun way of expressing things. They do so much with what I would imagine, sadly, would be a much lower budget than a show like Moon Knight or a show like WandaVision. So having said that, I found it delightful. I ended up loving all of the characters. They all ended up, and the relationship to Kamala was always engaging for me. It was never boring. It was always sympathetic, and it was always real. It felt lived in. And hands down, biggest and best debut ever in the MCU for any actor, I think, is Mon Vellani. She just nails it. She gets into that scene, the first scene, and you're already in love with her, from her narration of the events of Endgame all the way to the end of that, just throughout that episode. She's such an expressive actress. She's such a terrific, charismatic presence. And I spent the entire episode going, this might be a better debut than even Tom Holland as Spider-Man, and those are huge shoes to fill.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that being said, I'm glad that we all loved it. I think we could probably start breaking down aspects of it. What did you guys think of the intro? Toni, we'll start with you. Her kind of talking about the events of Endgame up to her having her first driving lesson.
I to the YouTuber. To the YouTuber.
She's a content creator.
I love it. I love it so much. I'm just like, yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that tracks. That's 100% what you do when you love the Avengers. You make YouTube videos about how much you love them, and I loved it. I thought it was such a and more than just endearing her to the audience. I felt like it was a really great way to kind of show like how the lore of the Avengers actually exists and how it manifests like in the world for like normal people. My biggest criticisms of the MCU overall, especially within the Infinity Saga, is like we get to see what's happening with the Avengers, but we don't really get to see like how the world is really reacting to them, just outside of like the few times that they're being like, if it's Tony Stark in front of a huge crowd getting, massive amounts of applause, or especially with after Endgame, we lost Tony, we lost Natasha. And I know me, I just kind of felt like, well, does the world care at all that these people are gone? Does it, especially like, I know they'll miss Tony because Tony was a public figure. He was a celebrity, but it's like, was Natasha at the same level, where people have cared? And to like, even see like within the episode, how people definitely are not only taking notice, but like memorializing them and like, modeling themselves. And even the fact that I'm like, I don't, and especially because she's such a huge fan of Carol, it's like, oh yeah, I guess the world will know and should know about Carol. I don't exactly know like how they would have like told the world about that battle, right? The Avengers versus Thanos at the end of Endgame. I don't know if there was like a Dateline special or something, or if it's just been pieced together from Scott Lang's podcast. But I just think that it's like really wonderful that it's like that story has been told. People know who was there. People know that they have several heroes out there to appreciate and love. I love the fact that she just picked like, yeah, that one, the one that punched a ship out of the sky. That's the one I love. And so I just find it, I find her adoration feels real for her fangirling feels weird, not weird, but like real. And and even though, yeah, it can be a little cringy at times, but it's also like, yeah, it's us. We're super cringy at times and how much we love these characters. But it's sweet and beautiful and wonderful, and it connects her to this bigger community of others, and the way that she interacts with her friend. And oh my god, the driving test, if that just was not like the perfect way to just undercut, like, this is not going to be a cool character that we're following. She's not going to be in any way kind of smooth or suave. It's just going to be this. I loved it. I thought it was amazing and wonderful. I feel like I'm just going to say amazing and wonderful throughout this entire hour. So.
You can add a cosmic to it.
Yeah, we could throw around cosmic. Jasmin, did you have any thoughts as well in the intro?
So in the comic, not to be that person, like if you were the mom.
I love it.
Yeah.
In the comic, she's not a YouTuber. She's she does fanfics, and I thought it was really cute how they adapted it to be a YouTuber as a bit more relatable, given the time period, right? It's been, so that dropped in 2014. The person writing it is in their now late 30s and 40s, so they were a millennial writing a Gen Zer, so it's going to be a bit different, right? So they wrote as fanfics. So I like the adaptability to do YouTube content, and I thought that was nice. And I liked how exactly what Toni said. This is the first Disney Plus, I don't want to say MCU, but I guess it's not the cinematic universe, but it will be, because all of these characters have been in and out or entering the MCU.
It's officially MCU canon for sure.
Okay, for sure. Okay, so then I could say MCU, right? I'm not gonna get somebody who's like, it's actually not the MCU.
No, it's officially MCU for sure.
Okay, good. So all right, so this is the first episode in the MCU Disney Plus series shows that I am not confused as to what the hell is going on. WandaVision, confused. Loki, confused. Moon Knight, confused. I'm constantly lost. This is the first one where I'm just like, all right, I could like breathe. Like, I don't have to, like, my mind is not going, not everyone's having a conversation on social media as to like figure out what in the world is happening. And it's also our first female superhero, because Wanda is a hero. I don't know if she's a hero anymore. Homegirl's a villain.
Anti-hero.
I would say
Yeah.
WandaVision, she ends as the villain, but she starts it out kind of as an anti-hero. Well, debatable. Anyways.
Right. So this
Yeah.
is the first where we have like, it's clear cut, easy to understand.
Yeah.
I could just relax and enjoy it while I'm watching. I'm not trying to like strain myself, trying to understand what's going on. And exactly like Toni said, it's placed in a point where we see what's happening, which like the only ever time we ever saw what happened in the scope of Endgame and Avengers was in Far From Home, Spider-Man, right? Where we saw the posters of Iron Man and stuff. And so we know where we're at in the series immediately, no confusion there. We know who the character is. It's a kid, instantly relatable because she's a fan. So I enjoyed the car lesson thing, was hilarious. I thought it was really funny. It was a great comical break without trying too hard, right? It's something, and again, at that point, we're like, okay, if you couldn't relate to her being a fangirl, you can relate to her messing up her driver's test, because we've all been there. We've all like struggled with that. So instant, like when I instantly feel relaxed watching it, knowing that I'm gonna have a good time. So yeah, I like.
So random question for you guys. Did you guys watch Hawkeye?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Like, so I agree with you a lot. Their MCU has been very, in terms of the shows, anyways, the Disney Plus shows. Jasmin, you are spot on. Most of them are kind of like, what the hell are you going on? I feel like Hawkeye's the only one that was a little straightforward. Maybe Falcon Winter Soldier, that was pretty straightforward as to what was going on too.
Yeah.
But I feel like with Ms. Marvel, it's the second MCU show to really introduce a new character. And the first one was Moon Knight. And if you watch that first episode in Moon Knight, you're like, what the hell is happening? Unless you were like well versed with the comics. So having a show that's just very straightforward, you don't need to have oodles of mythology. If you don't know anything even about the Infinity Saga, she's recapping you on the Infinity Saga in the beginning with, but she's doing it from a fan's perspective, which is, as Toni, you mentioned, is so human and relatable. That enthusiasm that she shares, that love for comic book characters, in their world, real life heroes, but in our world, comic book characters. It's infectious. It's everything that we feel inside when we talk about Ms. Marvel and when we talk about Captain Marvel and when we talk about the Avengers. So I ultimately immediately infectious personality. We just love her to death from the instant she starts talking. And then failing that driver's test, Toni, you brought up a really good point. That's our first sign that this is not the cool girl, the cool sexy comic book girl from Jersey who wears skimpy outfits and in every comic book has like a triple D cup, I mean, like this is a regular girl. This is one of us. This is who people are in real life. And I love that she messes up. And in the most human way possible. It just opens the door to who this person is and what these relationships are going to look like as the series progresses. So moving on, we get to high school. We meet Nikiya and Bruno, her two best friends. Bruno is an absolute sweetheart. We find out he's a genius. Nikiya is also a wonderful, socially active individual for sure. And we love her for that. We kind of, frowned on her for betting against Kamala's driving test, but who could blame her after that first, that first iteration? And we see that these guys are kind of the outcasts in school, I mean, like Kamala's, no one really knows her name. They're kind of just like, this is where she can't get to her locker, I mean, like it's
Spider-Man vibes.
It's Spider-Man vibes for sure.
Yeah.
What did we think about the introduction of Bruno and Nikiya and how they're being portrayed in the series, especially since both of you guys have been reading these two characters since they've been in the comics for some time? Did you guys like how the MCU is kind of setting them up and portraying them so far? And free for all, whoever wants to go first.
I like them. I think it's great. I think I'm gonna take it outside of the comics for a second. I mean, in the comics she is that, but like real life Nikiya being a hijabi is so refreshing, and like her style about it is awesome, because it's always been something that like Americans or like the West, I hate saying it that way, but like they're kind of like look at the hijab and was like, this is a women oppressed, or this is, not a choice. And we're gonna get a lot of information about that, and this is the first time I really see actually a hijabi on screen, because we got in Moon Knight, we got Layla. Layla is Middle Eastern. Nikiya is Middle Eastern too. Layla of religion unknown, I think. But Nikiya is obviously Muslim. So her having the hijab and being cool and down to earth, I love that. And I love how like you already can tell from like body language, she's empowered. She's like a bit of an older sister type of vibe to Kamala. And I like that. And I love Bruno. Bruno gave me the Ned vibes from Spider-Man, but and I love their friendship, as even though there might be something else happening not similar to Ned and Peter, but yeah, so I really like the dynamic of their friendship, and I think it's pretty wholesome. And I like how, again, like I compare it to Spider-Man, but like in this case there's two girls, versus two boys. And so I like the more of, we're adding more female characters into the MCU.
Toni, how about you?
I remember in the comic, who was the blonde white character in the comic? Is it the same name as, what is her name? But anyway, what is it?
The other girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot her name already too.
Oh, I can't remember. But anyways, there's like a whole
the popular girl, right?
Yeah, the popular girl, where basically she interacts with Kamala, and she's like basically saying like, oh my God, yes, because like you must be so oppressed because of your culture and religion. And she's trying to position herself as like, and I know these things because I'm like so aware and culturally proficient and woke and like, and it's just like, oh my God, like seriously. And it's like this, they infantilize Kamala in the comics.
Her name is Zoe or Zoe?
Zoe and it's Zoe in the show.
So it's probably Zoe in the comic as well.
Okay.
But it's so instead of this being like they kind of touch on that, it's like, oh, these used to be friends and they used to play together whenever they were younger, and now that they're firmly in high school, they definitely have nothing to do with one another. And in the comics, it's very much like everybody, not just Zoe, but like everyone else is like, oh, you're essentially a baby because of the fact that your culture like prevents you from like socializing like the rest of us. Like you can't go out and hang out like the way that we can, and you can't dress the way that we can. So then, in the comics, Kamala gets her powers from the Terrigen mists, and she just happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And she's
at her party.
Yeah. What's that?
She was at her party.
At Zoe's party
that Zoe was
snuck
at.
out just to prove a point, to be like, I can be like the others. Yeah. And I love that they kind of like, all right, that was a point to be made then, but now we're changing it for here. And I think that was the right move. Yeah. And I like that they don't have to go ahead and verbalize the fact that like she feels different. And that there isn't necessarily like a blatant bully. It's just her kind of just feeling at odds and at a step with everybody else, just for a number of reasons, but also because she herself hasn't found her own confidence yet. Her parents and their expectations is also coming into play. So
it's like coming of age.
Right. Yeah. So I like that there isn't just such if this was like in the 90s or 80s, they definitely would have made Zoe like push her into a locker or something.
Yeah.
Right? And nobody's doing that. It's just more of a like, oh, like people are just kind of like cold to her. Nobody's like blatantly mean, which I do like that we have now progressed to a more like
real,
like insidious and subtle way of bullying or just ostracizing somebody for the sake of the story, just because it's like, that feels more real. It's not often that you're going to get like a William Zabka character, from Karate Kid, where they just want to immediately start beating the shit out of you on site. Yeah. So it felt more real. I do like Nikiya. I do like Bruno. There's a lot there that's left unsaid, but it makes me want to watch more, because I'm just like, what is Bruno's deal? Like when Kamala says like, oh, because he has no family. And I'm like, I'm sorry. who has no family and what's happening? Why does he seem to be like the proprietor of a whole convenience store and he has a loft apartment above it? He looks 14. What is happening? And I just realized now that like, even if I had no connection to these characters, if this had not been attached to a comic book at all, I would be like, well, now I have to watch next week in order to find out what Bruno's deal is. So I love that there's a lot left unsaid and that it's not just full of heavy exposition.
Yeah.
I like that they're allowing these conversations to be more natural, because the way that we normally talk to each other, especially when we're amongst friends, it's not like, well, Johnny, you know that I can't go out because of my parents and they're such a drag. Like it feels like I know that about you, and therefore all the things that are important about you don't have to be verbalized. So I like the more natural approach to developing these characters.
Yeah, no, it's kind of the nice, refreshing thing about the writing. I mean, I think it's Bisha Ali, the writer, and I think she's the showrunner as well, right? Who put this teleplay together. She makes the world feel a lot more lived in. I think it's something that it has in common with Spider-Man: Homecoming and even Far From Home to a degree. Flash Thompson's not a stereotypical like Joe Manganiello, I'm gonna punch you because you threw French fries in my face or whatever. This is like, hey, Penis Parker, you're a douchebag. That's bullying today, right? And it's not real bullying. Flash is not like a monster, just the same way that Zoe's not a monster. Yeah, they're just jerks, and I love that gives a feeling of authenticity and really down to earth, real world sensation to this to not just the MCU, of course, because this is the MCU, but to Kamala's inner world, her specific area of the world, and of the MCU. So yeah, echo everyone's sentiments. Love that. So moving on from there, we get a lot more, of course, of Kamala and Bruno. And they're chatting about this game plan because she failed her test. She's not going to be able to take the car out and run errands, which would have been the perfect guise for something that we all wish was real, Avengers Con.
Might be true. I don't know, Kevin.
I think so.
He did say that there might be an Avengers Con in the future. So
hey, man,
he's hoping.
He would be a very unsmart man if he didn't make that happen.
I mean, we get Star Wars Celebration. I was just there 2 weeks ago, and it ended up being a super spreader event where everyone that I knew got COVID. Thank God, not me.
Oh no!
But, yeah, right.
Did they get you?
No. I was freaking out because, and sorry, this is tangential for our viewers. I was freaking out because I was sitting in a panel for Mandalorian, and we really wanted our friend to join us, so he came and joined us. The evening after, he literally tested positive, so we were freaking out because we were like sitting next to him the entire time. We had our masks on, but
Thank
just
God.
being that close. And lovely guy, love him to death. Not his fault at all.
Yeah.
But it was really, really touch and go there and super scary. But everyone else that I know around there just got it, and it was scary as hell. So hopefully when Avengers Con becomes a thing, COVID, it won't be a COVID super spreader event.
I have a feeling, like, it just clicked in my head right now that it totally might be like a Disney event, and they'll just have it at Avenger Campus, especially now that Epcot, also at Walt Disney World, just got a Guardians ride that just opened like a week ago. I have a feeling like it might be there because all the superheroes there for the MCU shows is like come and go, right? Like we'll have Hawkeye, we'll have the Loki from the TVA.
The TVA,
and then we have Miss Marvel right now. We also had Kate Bishop, we had Moon Knight, both the
Mr. Knight and Moon Knight.
Exactly. So we've so I feel like I was like, there's no way they're just gonna have these characters and just gonna disappear. Like I feel like they're gonna come back, and I feel like they might test drive it at one of these Disney events, especially because at these Disney events you could cosplay. The adults can cosplay because that's forbidden at Disney outside of ticketed events. But hey, I'm saying it here and remember it because I think that's exactly what's going to happen, and I really hope it does, and I really hope it becomes a convention outside of it too. But
I think it'll be a pavilion at D23.
Oh,
23. It is in a couple months, so
I think it'll be a pavilion because up until I didn't go to the last one, but I mean, they usually do like, this is for parks and this is for that. And I'm like, that's cool and fun, but like, how much better would it be if you're like, hey, you get to, walk in and out of Avengers Con? I feel like that
smart.
I feel like that would be like just a much better way of doing that.
They had that for Galaxy's Edge as well. And like, what else are you going to put for Star Wars? I mean, they're definitely going to put something for Star Wars, but your point's
yeah.
Legit point. I'm going to go with your side, Team Toni, on that one.
D23.
Hopefully, yes. A couple more months to D23. Yes.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So that's all I wanted to point out from that scene was the fact that Avengers Con exists and we need it to exist in real life like tomorrow. But moving on from there, we have a storyline for this episode, which is that these kids need to get to Avengers Con. They need a perfect reason for it because Kamala's parents just shut it down. They don't understand the nature of conventions. They don't understand parties. It's not a party, it's a convention. But they don't understand that. And
non-moms, it's a party. Anything people your age that parents are not at and has nothing to do with your culture.
That's a party.
Not
an orgy can happen. Yes.
I do want to ask about that though, actually. I mean, what did you guys think of the interpretation of how conservative Kamala's mom and to a degree her dad is? I mean, he seems a little bit more relaxed, but I think a lot of people out there, especially in the Muslim community, were kind of talking about how they don't really always like that interpretation of their culture, and I don't want to speak for them or anything like that, but it's just, feedback that I've heard from fellow reporters of mine who are in that MENA community. Did you guys feel like similarly that maybe it was a more negative portrayal of that conservative culture, or do you think it was pretty accurate and spot on?
It was spot on, but for me personally, I heard all those comments as a kid growing up, like your outfit's too tight. And you have to keep in mind that like Muslim culture is more modest in terms of not because it's not in an oppressive type of way, but like in a protective type of way. Like they're trying to protect women, and because obviously women can be attacked and we see that all the time. And so it's a protective type of way. It's also like a self-respect type of way where you shouldn't be like showing your figure and stuff. When you get older, it's different, but when you're younger, they're very protective. And so I went through literally that same exact experience outside of conventions. I didn't start cosplaying till I was like 24. So I was like a fully grown adult. But if I were doing that at 16, definitely like my prom, my mom went with me to prom. I didn't have a date. She came with me. I didn't do senior night. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. So it's like, it's very much very spot on for me. Every Muslim person I've known growing up, exact same experience. Like my best friend, she's Muslim Middle Eastern as well. We both were not allowed dates at prom. We were each other's dates to prom because our parents were like, no such thing. Even though I was asked, and she only got to go and I only got to go because my mom went, So that was a spot on experience. Everybody just got a little bit of my life story right there. Did I still dance when From the Windows to the Wall came on to the Yin Yang Twins? Yes, I was in the middle of the dance floor. However, my mom,
hell yeah.
And I was 18. So
I think that's kind of the beautiful thing about a show like this and a situation like this being depicted on the show. It's the story, probably not just your own story, but probably hundreds and thousands of others out there who have wanted to do this. Whether it's the MENA community or even just like, let's say, conservative Asian parents, like the ones that I had. I think we all experienced that, and it ended up playing like this very universal moment, I think, for everyone in a very realistic way,
I love that you said universal experience because I'm not Muslim. I'm Native American and I grew up on a reservation in South Florida, but I was raised on the reservation, but my mother is Mexican Catholic. So having a conservative religious mother, everything that happened, I was like, oh my God, I was tearing up a lot throughout this episode. But whenever the mom is just like blatant about like, no, I don't trust you. And you know, the dad's like, no, we just don't trust anybody. Like, no, I don't trust you. Or when the mom is like, being very adamant about like, you can do this, but you have to do it in a very constrained way, or you have to do it according to our conditions, or absolutely not, because there's all kinds of, dangerous
Crazies
things
out
out there. Right. And it's just like, so I was like, God, this is exact. This is exact. Like the nuances and the terms used were definitely different, but I just was like, this feels almost
Familiar.
It
Yeah.
feels so real and familiar.
Right.
And so I love the fact that Marvel is part of this trend showcasing how these experiences are not just, yes, they are specific to a community, but they are universal. So that way multitudes of people in other communities have their own very similar experience. And I love how they're just blowing wide that myth that was so prevalent, like in the early millennium, that like only certain audiences will appreciate a character if it's from the same community, right? So like only if it's a Black film, only Black audiences will show up, and so on and so forth. So I love that they're just blowing that wide open, and they've done it with a multitude of their films and their projects. And it just felt so, I definitely hear what you're saying whenever it's like this idea that like young girls have to be protected, because that's the way in which it's always framed, right? That like you can't do that because you as a young girl don't realize how vulnerable you could be in certain situations. And while I'm older, I can appreciate that to some extent. It definitely is also a generational thing, and it's also like a parent-child thing, and in a relationship that, I think there is a certain, when people say like, you'll understand when you're a parent. And I'm like, I get that you're like super worried and this is how you communicate your love to me. But it just also at the same time feels at times very constrictive.
Very.
And even negative, especially when you start trying to convince me that this is foolishness and you should just abandon all these things and just like do the things that we approve of you to do. It just was like, oh yeah, that feels like the moment when Kamala, hurts her mother and father's feelings when she rejects. I just
hurt
like
so much.
It hurt so much, but at the same time, I was like, I get it, but at the same time, like, oh, that sucks, but I get it, and yeah, and I was like, this is exactly the complicated feeling I have about my own mom and my own dad. Sometimes when I just felt like you're doing too much, but at the same time, it's also like I love that you care, and it just. I don't think I can actually pinpoint another moment, especially within these Marvel projects, that kind of fully captures how complicated those relationships and those interactions can be. Because you're like, on one hand, you want Kamala to just go live her best life and win the cosplay contest. But at the same time, you're just like, don't do that to your dad. Look how excited that man is. You take him to Avengers Con right
now. I cried so hard.
It was so sweet. It was so cute that the effort that she puts into making the costumes, him painting himself.
Yeah. I got so mad at her, but then I was like, I was there as a kid too.
Right. I was like, I get it, but like, oh, sweetie. And I just think about like, yeah, maybe I did some things to my mom and dad that maybe weren't like the nicest things to do and say when I was just trying to like live my life as a teenage kid. Like but yeah, I just love how even right now I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, kind of sort of maybe, I don't know. I still love Kamala, whatever, but at the same time, go apologize to your dad right now.
So yeah, about the question you asked, is Toni actually brought up an excellent point, which is what I wanted to say. I did see some of those remarks. One of the persons that made that remarks is somebody that I know, and I love that person. So I know exactly what you're talking about. However, the fact that her mom spent time, made costumes for her and her dad shows that her mom is open and understanding to that, as long as you have your guardian with you, which by the way, again, totally happened with me. I went to go see Lord of the Rings when I was 13 when it came out. My dad had to come with me. My dad's even a bigger fan of Lord of the Rings than I am. So because of that, but it's like, you can do this. However, I'm scared. Just those words. I'm not scared of you. I'm scared for you has been uttered in my life so much. When they had said that, I'm like, no fucking way. Did they just say that?
Right.
I thought I was the only one. And so when that happened, I was just like, whoa. Yeah, I guess it wasn't just me, but that's the fact that they did that shows like her mom was open and understanding and went even above and beyond to stay up all night to make these costumes for her. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
I
It's
mean,
not it's for those out there who are looking at it like it's an oppressive culture. It's clearly not. It is so much more of a protective culture, and that's not anything that's even culturally specific. It's universal. You know, what parent doesn't want to protect their kids? They made a whole movie about fish called Finding Nemo that touches on that. I mean, come on, people. It's not an
about
oppression.
it in the episode too, like when she ends up leaving her bike and they say, what's the chances of you having that coming back? And it's like, oh, it's Jersey City. Like they, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like they did touch on how like they don't live in the best area as well. So it's not just like, oh, just, you know, parents with the iron grip. It's more like, we're aware of where we live. It is a trying area, right? So let's be careful. And you're young and a kid, and obviously your head's in the clouds. So you're not like, you're vulnerable. So I don't think it's too conservative at all. No, not at all.
So speaking of iron grip, we'll have to move on just a little bit because I think we're running out of time. First off, I'd like to address Michael Lee for tuning in. Thank you and saying hi. Thank you for saying hi and tuning in. Hi, Michael. And then I Am Cowie says, I was so hyped that she is a cosplayer, which is amazing. So taking the cosplayer and the iron grip, there's one scene that we have to move into, which is Kamala, as her mom's throwing out a box of junk, quote unquote, finds a cuff there, and it ends up being the perfect personal touch for her Captain Marvel cosplay. Her and Bruno escape out the tree as very inelegantly as possible, despite her fantasy.
I thought it was a dream sequence. That's how inelegant it was. I was like, this is 100% not happening, right?
It was. They somehow, with the skin of their teeth, make it to Avengers Con minus one bike, which is sad, as you mentioned, Jasmine. But they get there and it's like the greatest time ever. You know, we are seeing all these amazing Easter eggs. We want to be there with them. It's so much fun. And she gets ready for her cosplay contest. Sadly, she leaves the gloves that Bruno poured his heart and soul and sweat into making very sweetly behind. But at least she has her cuff. She puts it on, and this is where the iron grip comes in. You know, she starts projecting lights. And, you know, I mean, everyone's freaking out and like happily freaking out. They're excited. They're seeing this person do all this stuff. But it causes a little bit of commotion. She has to save Zoe. And then she uses her light iron grip, you know, which kind of looks a little bit like the Embiggen powers in the comics, but purple and made of light. To save Zoe. So how do you guys feel as hardcore Captain Marvel fans that they are, you know, of course, alluding to and paying homage to the Embiggen powers, but it is kind of a light energy Green Lantern, Purple Lantern, I should say, based power, you know? I mean, do you guys have any reservations about that, or?
They just made her powers even cooler.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's, if you read the comics and you knew what her powers were, they heightened it in a sense. And I'm like, who's not here for that? And also, speaking of the convention, can we mention my favorite part was this right here?
Okay, so the implication is that Scott Lang got on the mic and then told that whole story and then concluded it with, and then that's when I told Cap, sir, that's America's ass. And then the fans just ran with it.
That's amazing.
The best part.
It definitely
I need that print.
A great scene. Yeah. And I think also some of the cool little Easter eggs that you see in that, like the sequence Captain Marvel statue, it's at Disneyland right now. So folks can go there and check it out, you know, which is pretty
cool. But I love what they did with her powers, just because one, with the problem that they would run into with trying to like depict her abilities in two dimensions was that sometimes it looked like forced perspective as opposed to like a part of her actually growing, or it just looked like it was closer to the camera, right? Or the viewer, right? So feel like with making her a little bit more like part Dazzler, part Miss Marvel, I just feel like that's a much easier, not a more readable way of depicting what her abilities are.
Yeah.
And I don't, the Terrigen Mist was always just a really weird workaround, I feel, especially since this is mostly around the time that Fox still had the word mutant.
Yeah.
That's what
within
it
their
comes down to. It's
possession.
the separation of
Properties.
Right. So
Yeah.
then trying to go ahead and work in like, oh, it's Terrigen Mist and it's forced mutation or
Yeah.
latent mutant potential. And it's not the same thing as a mutant. It's a mutate and it's an inhuman, or it just was like, how about, sometimes people just have powers. Sometimes people happen upon a magical bracelet and and that's all there is to it. And that's fine. I'd much rather just have a much more simplified explanation for the power, and we can actually explore what that means, like in terms of her abilities, rather than like trying to like debate as to like, well, it's not comic accurate. Like, who cares?
Not to mention that, let's be frank here, with the exception of a very minor scene in a recent MCU movie involving a specific Inhuman, the track record with Inhumans in live action has not really been fantastic. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. aside, they did a really good job with the Inhuman storylines there.
Yes.
But yes, with a specific royal family, it really didn't come out well. So I feel like I wouldn't blame Marvel for wanting to distance themselves from, the Terrigen Mists and the Inhuman kind of subplots if people would connect it ultimately back to a pretty notorious show.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that, as well as the fact that, can we discuss Multiverse of Madness?
Let's go for it.
Okay,
Why not?
Mr. Fantastic. I mean,
Yes.
her powers are way too similar
Similar.
and familiar to Reed Richards.
Yeah.
So there needed to be that clear like distinction that she's not part of the Fantastic. She's not an X-Men. I guess they're not trying to go into Inhumans like you said, because I think they're trying to roll the X-Men into the MCU slowly but surely, which is probably why they did what they did with Wanda as well, because she also is an X-Men. She's Magneto's kid. So I think that's what it is. And if we look at the bigger picture, take a step back, as she still has her embiggening powers, so we'll be fine. I feel like people crying about the powers is like, you're being a bit nitpicky here. Let's look at the bigger picture. And I mean, as long as they don't like, nerf her, then I'm good. Making her more powerful, why would I be mad at that? I think it's a great addition. I like the power change.
And at the end of the day, look, I mean, as long as it's a good story, as long as it's a good character,
cohesive,
which checkbox, just from this episode alone. The details are minor. We want a little bit of comic accuracy. Yes, of course, we love the idea that the embiggen powers work, and how it looks in the comics. But we don't have to have it, as long as it kind of looks pretty cool when she does the hand thing, very similar to the embiggen powers. Enjoy it. Just enjoy it, guys. I think that there was, if I may touch on one point, because we are sort of about to run out of time. Kamala comes home, her mom's upset, but she now is a superhero. She's got powers, and she's excited about it. She says cosmic, goes to bed. And then we have a post-credit scene where I wasn't expecting this from the first episode, because most Disney Plus shows don't have it in the first episode. But we get a post-credit scene with the Department of Damage Control. Agent Cleary, who we saw from No Way Home, present and seeing the footage of Kamala using her powers at Avengers Con. And now, the plot thickens. That's where we leave off. What did you guys think of Cleary's appearance and just damage control starting to come into the play?
I'm gonna let Toni do that, because I already saw the second episode. So
I wish it had been Jimmy Woo.
That would have been awesome. Oh my God.
I wish it had been Jimmy Woo, but I understand that we're more than likely probably setting up some external conflict. And that's fine. I just really would have loved if that external conflict would have come in the way of, one, a character that I do miss and we haven't seen since WandaVision. and it would be something where we know like this is not going to be I don't think these guys will be antagonists. I don't think they'll be necessarily bad guys, but it's like a complication until they prove themselves useful, probably like in the second to last episode. It just, yeah, I just was like, okay, that's cool. And that's awesome. And I like that she's on the radar, and that obviously that means that she's going the trajectory that it's going to take for her to become not just a lead in a Disney show, but also in an MCU movie. Yeah. She's on the fast track, which I do like. And that's probably more than likely what it does mean for her. Yeah, I mean, that character itself wasn't too jazzed about it. I think it was more about the implications of what it would mean for her as a character, and also for the actress to actually be on screen in a movie one day. I think that's what I was more excited about.
I think, and if I may, I think that the reason, because I would have loved Jimmy Woo too, that would have been awesome, and I love Randall Park. But I think the reason that they chose Arian Moayed is because he is also a Middle Eastern MENA character from the MCU, and I think that they wanted to have as much representation in it as possible. Sure. So it kind of makes sense from a nice connectivity standpoint. But man, I love Jimmy Woo. We don't get enough Jimmy Woo. I would love to see him there.
I think we're separating from Terrigen Mist. I think that's what it is, because in the comics, Terrigen Mist also brings up villains, and I think that they are separating. Even like her brother gets infected in the comics from the Terrigen Mist, so they are stepping away so far from that. I don't even think we're getting Lockjaw, which makes me sad, but I don't think we're gonna get Medusa or any of the Inhuman squad. So I think they're just taking it in a different direction. And Iman Vellani did say what universe Miss Marvel belongs in. I think she said 616. So she's like even disagreed with Kevin Feige's direction.
I disagree with Kevin Feige's direction. Yeah,
she's just like, he's wrong. And I'm like, girl, I would not say that.
I support Iman on this one.
She had a point. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. And that's like, for me, makes me even more intrigued, because I read the comics. I'm good. I'm done. So if they want to do a different twist, I'm here for it. Surprise me. So yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. I think we're along for the ride. I think it's going to be amazing. But the long and short of all of it is, Kevin Feige, this is Earth 19999, not Earth 616. Okay,
or
that's the bottom line.
8238 or whatever.
Or Dr. 838. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. But yeah. You guys, this has been amazing. I know that this is going to be only the first of several episodes that we're going to have, where we're going to discuss the living heck out of this amazing show about Iman Vellani's amazing, infectious, and charming performance. But overall, it's so good to hear your thoughts. And I think we need to hear, these types of thoughts and these types of conversations around shows that we all love, a lot more like this going forward. So to wrap things up, Toni, would you like to tell everyone where to find you?
Yeah, you guys can find me on all of social media at the Toni Sanchez. Toni with an I, Sanchez with a Z.
Okay, perfect. Jasmin, how about yourself?
We love it when one handle. It is the best thing. Jasmin Joestar on literally everything. So I've been pumping out Miss Marvel content like no tomorrow. So if you want to see more non-spoiler-ish reviews, I'm there too. So.
And again, I'm Mike Manalo at TidyBowBoy182 on Instagram and Twitter, but also just follow my work on the Nerds of Color, and you'll be fine. And What to Watch, and That's at LA. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Until next time, guys.
Bye.